On May 17th, 2023, Ecuadorian President Guillermo Lasso dissolved the National Assembly. For a maximum period of 6 months, Lasso will govern through decrees, each of which requires prior approval from the Constitutional Court. Lasso recently suffered an electoral defeat in a referendum he initiated, aiming to implement significant changes through public consultation. This setback dealt a severe blow to his political standing. Moreover, the prevailing state of insecurity, characterized by unprecedented crime rates, contributed to a record low approval rating of 14% for the president in May 2023. And so, on May 17, 2023, faced with the looming threat of impeachment, Guillermo Lasso used the constitutional rule called muerte cruzada, or mutual death, to preempt an impending attempt to oust him and vacate the assembly. Now, new elections have been called for August 20th, 2023, to replace both the Congress and the president. But the candidates who are voted in will serve reduced terms and only hold power until the previously scheduled general elections are held in 2025. In a recent interview with the Grayzone, Santiago Ortiz, a professor at the Latin American Faculty of Social Sciences who specializes in studying social movements and indigenous cultures, broke down exactly how Lasso's repressive measures and neoliberal policies brought us to this moment.
Este proceso viene en la segunda ola neoliberal, prácticamente con la subida del...
This process comes in the second neoliberal wave, practically with the rise of Mr. Moreno in 2017, and then with Mr. Lasso, where an alliance was formed by the elites, directed from behind the scenes by the neoliberal sector, a sector most closely linked to banking, aiming to govern Ecuador. Working in an alliance with the media, with the big media, with the armed forces, with the police, and with some business sectors. Let's say they have managed to practically destroy Ecuador in institutional terms and in economic terms.
Destruir el país en términos institucionales, en términos económicos.
Guillermo Alberto Santiago Lasso Mendoza, Presidente Constitucional de la República del Ecuador.
Lasso found himself embroiled in a contentious struggle with an assembly comprising a diverse array of ideologies that united in opposition to his agenda. The president witnessed his two primary bills falter in the assembly, prompting his declaration on March 29, 2022, that he would sever ties with the assembly and govern through decree. The president, who hails from a banking background, has demonstrated a lack of skill in political negotiations, and his shortcomings now seem to extend beyond his inability to garner support within the assembly, which encompasses representatives from various sectors, including the center and right. The first major blow to his legitimacy came in 2022 when millions of citizens took to the streets in support of an indigenous-led strike which originated with opposition to mining projects, but subsequently came to include a host of demands by a broad segment of impoverished Ecuadorians. Lasso failed to resolve the crisis, which ultimately turned violent and led to the intervention of the Catholic Church, whose representatives demanded Lasso sign a prearranged agreement to bring an end to the gridlock.
El gobierno no logró, digamos, articular una alianza, perdió contacto inclusive con sectores de derecha.
The government failed to form a social alliance. It even lost contact with sectors of the right, with business sectors, and in addition to this, government links to drug trafficking were discovered through Lasso's tutor, Mr. Danielo Carrera. Carrera was linked to a series of operations of an Albanian mafia group that basically took advantage of this situation to export drugs to Europe and other places. Here in Ecuador, there is a tradition of an elite, if you want, predatory or rentier, that tries to reach state posts, to control it and manipulate it towards economic groups of the private sector. And it seems to me that Lasso has that mentality, that is, to take advantage of state resources, but at the same time weaken the state, and in some way even weaken public management itself. In this particular sector of the rights mentality, there is a gap between the private and public, They simply cannot understand how to manage a government properly. There are other sectors of the right that have achieved it, but this particular sector that Lasso represents, which is practically a bank, in which he has his money and from where he controls much of the national economy, fails to understand what public management means.
No logra comprender lo que significa el Estado, la gestión pública.
The mutual death mechanism serves as a means to restore some degree of power to the executive branch. The rule was devised under the administration of Rafael Correa, who ruled Ecuador for 10 years until his party fell under the spell of US-aligned Lenin Moreno. After Moreno took power in 2018, Correa was effectively betrayed by his former protege and forced to seek exile abroad. But even now, 6 years after leaving office, Correa remains an influential figure in Ecuadorian politics. His administration's mutual death rule was framed as an effort to counter the substantial influences wielded by economic, social, and interest groups represented within the National Assembly, in a country where, historically, nearly half the presidents who've held office have been removed from power. Throughout the nation's Republican history, only 29 presidents have successfully completed their full 4-year terms, while 27 were either ousted, overthrown, or assassinated. And now Lasso, who's promised not to run again, is set to become number 28. Yet, a still greater number of Ecuadorian leaders were never elected at all. The country has endured a total of 46 provisional juntas, out of which 33 were sparked by military and civilian coups, and that uncertainty is far from ancient history. Within the span of just 12 years, between 1996 and 2008, Ecuador witnessed the rise of 9 presidents and a de facto triumvirate. So who might emerge as the victor from this moment of political instability? Ecuador's crisis of security may give rise to a new right-wing figure who could emerge as a strongman and leader for the Ecuadorian right. Jan Topic, who's running as an independent candidate, has served in the French Foreign Legion and participated in military operations in various countries. Topic's message of prioritizing security to stabilize the country resonates with a frightened and desperate population, which has been confronted with daily reports of missing children and women alongside an average of 17 murders per day. His background in security could give him an advantage over other candidates. The indigenous, anti-mining, and progressive movement, Pachakutik, faced internal conflicts on several fronts, including nullifying Salvador Quispe's bid and the withdrawal of Leonidas Iza. Facing a tight schedule, the movement eventually decided not to present a presidential candidate. Yaku Perez, who changed his name from Carlos to Yaku to enhance his indigenous appeal, is also running, but he was largely discredited within the indigenous movement following his endorsement of Lasso in 2021. As previously documented by the Grayzone, Perez received funding and training from the National Democratic Institute, a U.S. intelligence cutout meant to give American lawmakers an alternative to relying on the CIA to meddle in other countries' affairs. Otto Sonnenholzer, former vice president, represents a natural successor to Lasso, given his close ties to international capital and the banking sector. Sonnenholzer signed the Madrid Charter, a document authorized by Spain's far-right Vox party, which characterizes left-wing groups as enemies of the people engaged in a criminal project under the direction of the Cuban regime. Fernando Villavicencio, another prominent anti-Correa figure, is also running for the presidency. He has also been accused of acting on behalf of foreign interests after being caught taking funds from the U.S. government's National Endowment for Democracy while he investigated former President Correa. Villavicencio was credited as the co-author of a since-debunked report in The Guardian, which accused WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange of holding secret meetings with Donald Trump's former campaign manager Paul Manafort. Editors refused to substantiate the following pushback from other mainstream media outlets, and the claims were derided as fabrications by WikiLeaks, which responded by challenging The Guardian to $1 million bet to prove that Manafort met Assange. Subsequently, The Guardian chose not to include Villavicencio's byline on the web version of the article he helped author. Apparently undeterred by The Guardian's effort to distance itself from him, Villavicencio tweeted about his part in the so-called investigation which sought to destroy WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. In this photo, he can be seen posing alongside his co-author on the story, Luke Harding, a discredited Guardian journalist who was exposed as a Western national security establishment tool in a now infamous exchange with Grayzone journalist Aaron Mate. But the main opposition force in the country remains Revolution Ciudadana. A party whose platform emphasizes social investment will present young lawyer Luisa Gonzalez for president and economist Andreas Arauz as vice president. Whoever wins will face serious challenges. Piecing together a country that's so heavily indebted and so mired in political dysfunction is no easy task. The question remains, will the next president who takes office simply submit to foreign private interests like so many of their predecessors? Or will they finally be able to pursue a path of Ecuador for the Ecuadorians once again?